What if the most dangerous chapter of addiction is not youth, but the quiet, invisible season after 40, when life appears stable on the outside, yet something subtle begins to shift within? Many people assume substance use disorders belong to the reckless energy of adolescence or the experimental years of early adulthood. Yet the data and the clinical stories reveal a different and more unsettling truth. Midlife can become a turning point, not because people suddenly lose control, but because the biology of the brain evolves in ways most of us never pause to consider. After 40, dopamine regulation, the intricate system responsible for motivation, reward, and the sense of pleasure that makes life feel worth living, begins to change. The brain's reward pathways become less responsive to ordinary stimuli. What once felt satisfying may now feel muted. Achievements that used to generate excitement produce only mild gratification. Even moments of joy seem quieter. This is not weakness, and it is not a character flaw. It is neurobiology. Over time, chronic stress compounds this shift. Careers reach plateaus or intensify in responsibility. Financial commitments grow heavier. Caregiving responsibilities expand to aging parents while children begin moving toward independence. The cumulative load of decades of striving settles into the nervous system. Cortisol levels rise and fall in patterns shaped by years of pressure. In this environment, substances or behaviors that once provided occasional relief can begin to take on a different function. A glass of wine that once marked celebration may now signal escape. A prescription medication intended for short-term support may gradually become a daily necessity. Digital distractions that once filled spare moments may quietly consume entire evenings. The brain, adapting to repeated exposure, recalibrates its baseline. Tolerance develops. More stimulation is required to produce the same effect. What once soothed now barely touches the discomfort. The risk does not explode overnight. It accumulates gradually, almost imperceptibly. This is the paradox of midlife vulnerability. On the surface, there is maturity, experience, and competence. Beneath the surface, the reward system is more fragile than it appears. Long-term exposure to stress and substances sensitizes certain neural circuits while dulling others. The capacity to feel pleasure from simple, healthy activities, conversation, exercise, creativity, can diminish if the brain becomes accustomed to stronger, faster rewards. In clinical settings, experts such as Dr. Anna Lembke have emphasized how modern environments amplify this vulnerability by surrounding individuals with high dopamine stimuli available at any hour. After 40, access remains constant, but resilience may not. The combination of biological aging and environmental abundance creates a quiet storm. The tragedy is that many people do not recognize the shift because it does not resemble the stereotypes of addiction. There are no dramatic collapses or public crises at first. Instead, there is a slow drift toward reliance. The brain seeks balance, yet repeated overstimulation pushes it further from equilibrium. Understanding this biological reality is not meant to alarm, but to awaken. When we recognize that midlife brings measurable changes in reward sensitivity, we gain the power to intervene early. Awareness transforms shame into strategy. The body may age, but insight allows intention. The story of substance use after 40 is not about inevitability. It is about understanding the subtle recalibrations of the brain and choosing with clarity how we respond before the quiet drift becomes dependency. By the time a person reaches midlife, the architecture of identity has been under construction for decades. Yet something unexpected often begins to tremble beneath the surface, and that tremor is rarely discussed with honesty. The 40s and 50s are frequently portrayed as the years of mastery, stability, and earned confidence. But psychologically, they can also become a period of profound reassessment. Careers that once symbolized ambition may start to feel repetitive or constraining. Goals that fueled earlier years may no longer ignite the same fire. Relationships evolve, sometimes deepening, sometimes fracturing under the strain of accumulated expectations. Children grow more independent, and with their independence comes a subtle silence in the home. Parents age, and the role reversal of caregiving introduces a new emotional gravity. Health concerns, once theoretical, become tangible reminders of mortality. This convergence of transitions creates a psychological climate that is uniquely vulnerable. The mind begins to ask larger questions about meaning, relevance, and purpose. When those questions linger without satisfying answers, discomfort grows. That discomfort does not always manifest as visible despair. It often presents as restlessness, irritability, or a quiet sense of emptiness. In that state, substances can appear not as threats, but as tools. Alcohol may feel like a bridge between stress and relaxation. Prescription medications may seem like responsible solutions to anxiety or insomnia. Even behaviors such as online gaming, shopping, or constant media consumption can become coping mechanisms disguised as harmless habits. The brain, already experiencing shifts in dopamine regulation, interprets these quick sources of relief as efficient strategies for managing emotional turbulence. Over time, however, the temporary relief subtly reshapes neural pathways, reinforcing the belief that discomfort must be anesthetized rather than understood. Suspense enters the story here, because the individual often remains fully functional. Bills are paid, meetings are attended, family obligations are met. From the outside, nothing appears broken. Yet internally, reliance increases. What was once occasional becomes routine. What was once optional begins to feel necessary. This gradual escalation is particularly dangerous in midlife, because autonomy is higher and oversight is lower. There are fewer external guardrails than in adolescence. No parents are monitoring behavior. Professional status may shield warning signs from scrutiny. Social circles may normalize heavy drinking or high-pressure lifestyles. Isolation can deepen quietly as friendships shift and time becomes more constrained. Without strong accountability, patterns solidify. The individual may even rationalize increased use as deserved reward for years of hard work. Meanwhile, chronic stress continues to sensitize the nervous system. Sleep disruption intensifies cravings. Emotional exhaustion lowers resistance. The psychological narrative becomes one of justification rather than caution. This is the overlooked midlife risk. Not dramatic rebellion, but slow normalization. The human mind is extraordinarily adept at adapting to incremental change. Each small increase feels insignificant, yet collectively they transform behavior. When emotional pain is repeatedly numbed instead of processed, resilience weakens. Purpose fades further. The cycle feeds itself. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a predictable interaction between stress, shifting identity, and neurobiology. Recognizing this dynamic requires courage, because it challenges comforting myths about maturity, automatically protecting against addiction. In truth, midlife can magnify vulnerability, precisely because responsibility and autonomy coexist with internal uncertainty. The suspense lies in how long this pattern can continue unnoticed. The answer depends on awareness. Without insight, the quiet coping strategy can evolve into dependency before anyone names it. With insight, however, the very same transitions can become catalysts for intentional change rather than silent decline. The turning point in midlife does not arrive with a dramatic announcement. It emerges in the quiet recognition that something once chosen freely now feels subtly compulsory, and that recognition can either awaken transformation or be buried beneath another layer of distraction. Prevention begins with an honest inventory of the reward system itself. When dopamine sensitivity decreases with age, the solution is not to chase stronger stimulation, but to recalibrate toward balance. The brain is plastic throughout life, and it responds to intentional shifts in behavior. Deliberate periods of abstinence from high dopamine activities allow receptors to regain responsiveness. Restoring equilibrium requires discomfort at first, because the nervous system must readjust to lower levels of stimulation. That temporary discomfort is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of healing. Chronic stress must also be addressed directly rather than anesthetized indirectly. Midlife demands structural resilience, consistent sleep schedules, regular physical movement, exposure to natural light, and meaningful social connection. Exercise increases baseline dopamine tone and improves executive function, strengthening the very circuits that regulate impulse control. Mindfulness practices retrain attention, teaching the brain to tolerate emotional fluctuations without reflexively escaping them. Purposeful reflection on identity transitions can transform uncertainty into growth. Instead of viewing career plateau or family changes as losses, they can be reframed as invitations to redefine contribution and meaning. Social accountability plays a critical protective role. Sharing intentions with trusted friends, partners, or support groups reintroduces external feedback loops that counter isolation. Autonomy without accountability can drift into secrecy, but autonomy paired with community becomes empowerment. Environmental design also matters. Removing easy access to substances, setting boundaries around digital use, and structuring evenings with intentional activities reduce exposure to high-risk cues. These are not acts of deprivation. They are acts of strategic self-governance. Education further strengthens prevention. Understanding how the reward pathway adapts to repeated overstimulation demystifies cravings. When urges arise, they can be interpreted as neurochemical echoes rather than moral weaknesses. This shift from shame to science reduces the emotional intensity that often fuels relapse. Midlife, paradoxically, offers advantages that younger years do not. Experience provides pattern recognition. Wisdom enables long-term thinking. Financial and professional stability can fund healthier pursuits. The same autonomy that increases risk can be harnessed to create disciplined routines. The critical step is early recognition. Waiting for catastrophic consequences is unnecessary and dangerous. Small course corrections implemented early prevent larger collapses later. Reflecting regularly on why and how substances are used reveals trends before they harden into dependency. The question is not whether enjoyment is allowed. It is whether use remains aligned with values and long-term well-being. When behaviors begin to erode sleep, relationships, or clarity, they signal imbalance. Courage lies in responding promptly rather than defensively. Midlife is not a decline into vulnerability, but a crossroads of awareness. Biological shifts, psychological transitions, and social changes converge. Yet they do not dictate destiny. They simply require conscious navigation. By respecting the evolving brain, addressing chronic stress directly, nurturing purpose, and strengthening community, individuals over 40 can transform a hidden risk into an opportunity for deeper resilience. The overlooked midlife risk becomes an overlooked midlife advantage when knowledge guides action. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.